Officials are trying to make sure Boston has the infrastructure for the public schools of the future, but many parents are worried that gains for some schools, especially charter schools, could mean a step backward for district public schools. And the parent group Quality Education for Every Student, or QUEST, has taken legal action to make the planning process more public. I'd like to welcome a member of QUEST, Kevin Murray. Thank you very much for being with us, Kevin.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having us.
First of all, is the whole purpose here to find out more about plans that still might be very formative, or is it a matter of maybe changing the give and take around this process?
I think there's a little bit of both. I think we were, as we spoke in an earlier conversation, we were very interested to find out what the McKinsey report, the audit of the school's buildings, as well as other buildings, revealed. And in doing so, we also hope to see a little bit to understand a little bit better how is the city thinking about this space process vis-a-vis all the other conversations going on about the schools. So there was a little of both those things. We wanted to learn something about the process and hopefully along the way make it more transparent.
Kevin, just a few months ago, we heard Mayor Walsh talking to a business group. He was using these figures, a capacity of 93,000 in the school system and an enrollment of 57,000. That sounded enormous. I mean, could that be true?
No, I don't think it could be. That is the number that came out of the McKinsey report. And I think as many people know now, the McKinsey report doesn't include any sort of idea about how they arrived at that number. And I think the feeling is that they probably just measured square footage, took a number that they believe should be the proper number for classroom size, and did a fairly simple arithmetic thing and came up with that number. City Hall has really, since Quest and other groups began looking into this, City Hall has walked quickly away from the McKinsey report. But the mayor and others have continued to use that number because it's useful in the conversation about school closings. So it wasn't just a few weeks ago, I think just last week we heard a similar number.
This is BNN News. We're talking about school buildings with Kevin Murray, a member of QUEST. Kevin, one of the things you've done is you've taken legal action to cough up some emails in the mayor's administration, in the school department, about what's going on here. Did this change your impression at all?
I think it affirmed or confirmed things that we were concerned about, which is that there is it's not any mystery that there's a conversation going on in the city about consolidation of the school system. And I think we're all ready for an honest conversation about what we have in the city in terms of school facilities and how those can best be used. I think we all know there are buildings in the Boston Public Schools that probably shouldn't be being used as schools. And there probably is some excess capacity. So a conversation about that would be really welcome. Our concern is just that the space discussion or the space audit would be used to meet some other goals vis-a-vis the schools. And school closings can serve a lot of different functions. And I think what these emails confirm is that even while the public conversation or the public declarations were that there was no plan to close schools, there was a very serious conversation going on inside the administration about using this space auditing process as a way to right-size the school system. And so we didn't know that for sure, but based on conversations we'd had with city officials and other people, we were concerned that that might be the case. These emails affirmed that, and affirmed the extent to which this was being discussed, not just inside City Hall, but with consulting groups, lobbyists, et cetera, and communications people about how best to present this to the public.
Well, strictly at face value, right size means you have the correct amount of space for the functions you need. But on the other hand, what do you read between the lines about when they say right size?
Well, the McKinsey report talks about closing schools of three different types. Schools that are in poor buildings that shouldn't be used for schools, which I think we would agree there probably is some of that. Second of all, schools that are very valuable and could bring excess money to the city in a situation where money is, of course, a scarce commodity. And the third were sort of failing schools that were not getting good results. And This conversation also goes on in the context of another complex conversation that is about the expansion of the charter school sector in the city, right? Which cannot be seen in the abstract from talking about capacity in the public schools. And second of all, the possibility of charter schools, as has happened in several other cities, gaining access to public school facilities for their operations. Obviously, charter schools need buildings as well, and up until now, Boston has not allowed charter schools to occupy public school facilities. So when we hear this right-size conversation going on and looking at the school audit process and the way that it's being looked at, we can't help but understand it in relation to this question about a charter school cap referendum, charters using public school buildings, etc. We see that as connecting the dots, all part of the same conversation.
Well, in an ideal world, we would have more district public schools that people value and want to send children to, and we'd have maybe more charter schools too. So why is more charter schools going to be a problem for the rest of us?
In the ideal world, we'd have resources for all the schools we need, right? Our country wouldn't be spending what it is, for example, on the military, and education would be a higher priority. We could have our cake and eat it as well. In a situation of very scarce resources, even in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, for education, we can't, it's not clear that we can support two separate school systems, both drawing entirely on public funds. So that's the concern, that expansion of the charter school system or the charter school sector may occur, depending on exactly how it happens, at the expense of resources available for public schools.
Now, I imagine there are other reasons why you want to change the map for schools, because you might have some neighborhoods with growing populations, some neighborhoods that are underserved, and you might want to save money on transportation. So how can people advance their interests along those lines?
How can people advance their
In other words, make sure that those things count as opposed to maybe other
Well, I think
considerations.
if there was a public process where we, number one, understood the disruption in people's lives that school closings cause. Even schools that aren't the best schools, that aren't performing at the highest level of some of the schools in our system, the closing of those schools really disrupts people's lives. So if we start with that we understand the problem that causes, and anything that we're going to do about changing the map of schools has to take that into account. And then we have a public process that looks at what is it that we have in terms of facilities, what is it that we need, where is population growing, right? To me, all the projections that I'm seeing about population in the city of Boston are toward expansion. You know, we're talking a lot about increasing housing stock, et cetera. Maybe we're going to grow the population in a way that doesn't grow the public school population, but it's difficult for me to see exactly how that happens. So I think we would have a public conversation about that, and in a very transparent way. If there were difficult decisions to be made, we would have that conversation leading to difficult decisions.
And Kevin, I should mention, if people want to find out more, you've got I think a page on Facebook that people can check out?
We do. If people search Quest BPS on Facebook, they'll get to the Quest Facebook page, which is the primary way that we deliver this information, including these emails.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Kevin Murray from Quest.